What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be installing a bunch of parts on the Subaru, but I think the most important one is going to be the TSS FAB subframe, cross member, and of course the control arm brace that comes with the subframe. I'm really excited about this. I'm going to weigh every part that comes off the car and every part that goes on the car. I'm not going to be able to film a whole lot of taking it all apart, but I don't think many people are really going to want to see all that anyway, because if you're buying these parts, you probably already know how to install them. Okay, so first and foremost, I love these subframes. You know, William at TSS is a great guy. He is very helpful so far. I may need to reach out to him again depending on how this goes, but I love how light they are. You know, this thing, I can pick it up one arm. I haven't weighed it yet, but it says on the website it's about 17 pounds or something like that. And I imagine the stock one is somewhere around 30. Plus you got all the bracing on there. I'll show you guys when we get to the subframe. There's that black metal plate, which I've actually replaced with a Cusco plate. Everything looks great. The welds are all, you know, top quality. It's got a sliding sway bar mount, so hopefully the sway bar clears everything. He told me that this will clear an IAG cast aluminum oil pan, so that shouldn't be a problem. Another thing I love is the subframe bolts. I wasn't aware of this. They have tapered seats, and if I can get a better shot, there's a cone taper in the actual subframe itself. So when you put the bolts in, it actually perfectly locates the center, and it will center the subframe to the bolt hole, so you'll never have to worry about the subframe being installed off center or shifted to one side or crooked or anything like that. So you really cannot mess that up. Now, one thing I don't like about the subframe, and I was a little bit nervous about this before I purchased it, but he said it would be fine and all that. So on the steer side, which is going to be this side here, on the GR bodies, you've got, it's kind of like an oval, 2 bolt holes lock it in place, and then there's that brace right here that locks it in even further, right? But on the passenger side, on the GR subframe, this here is supposed to be round. It's a half circle on the GR subframe. So what I went and did was, I went and got some polyurethane rack bushings for a 2004 WRX. And that's the part number. Not sure if these are going to work, but what they do is they convert the round body of the rack to a square body. So like I said, I'm not sure how it's going to work out. The thing I don't like though is there's wiggle room in there, and I'm afraid that that's going to be a problem. So William commented on one of my questions regarding that, and he said if the rack is able to move after it's tightened down, he said put some foil tape around the bushing to make everything solid. So I don't like that. It's a little bit chintzy. I'm going to see if me and my friends can possibly make a bushing that takes up all the slack and then install that in a future video. I just didn't have the time to do the measurements and research and all that. But so I'm going to go ahead and start taking the old subframe out with the engine in. I'm just going to use jacks to hold the engine up and get started on this. So let's get to it. Alright, so I got the undercover off and the front wheels off, and here's what it looks like is going to need to happen. The sway bar is going to need to come out. This Cusco brace, which replaced the stock black brace that was here, this is actually a lot heavier than the stock one, so I'm pretty excited. I'll be losing a little bit extra weight because of that. So we got to do the sway bar, the subframe brace, the lower control arm brace. Looks like I've got a small leak at my axle seal, so I'll do that at the same time because I'm doing the clutch today. The control arms are going to need to be disconnected. The outer tie rods are going to need to be disconnected. The steering shaft is going to need to be disconnected. And of course the steering rack hydraulic lines, which are so far buried in there that you can hardly see them. So I'm going to start tearing stuff out of here, all the things I just listed, and I'll get back to you when that's all out of there. Alright, so a quick little update where we got it so far. Got both front axles out, dropped the control arms out, got the tie rods off the outsides, sway bar and control arms I just took out as a one whole piece. So we're gonna have to disconnect the steering shaft, input shaft. I marked that with some paint, and then the steering rack lines, and then it should be, oh, and the engine mount nuts, and then it should be ready to come out. We'll obviously have to support the engine, but yeah, not too bad so far. Also, I just drained the trans fluid and these metal pieces came out, so rest in peace to the 5-speed. I guess 500 wheel torque's a little bit too much for it, but we're still gonna beat on it. So and I can't
with the steering rack in there, it's probably gonna be even heavier.
Yeah. Subframe. You ready? Right. All right, here you want to hold on this side. Is it?
Not as heavy as my lunch.
That thing's so small. Oh, you got it? Alright. Not as heavy as my lunch, so. Alright, let's take this in the perfect. Keith, you got it? Alright, so we got the tubular subframe. I'm gonna weigh this real quick. Oh, that's light. Let me write it down. And I weighed 160.2, so this is 15.2. That's pretty fucking light. 15.2?
Yeah, I know.
Alright, so you can see where we're putting the subframe up. It's hitting the mounts right here. That little nick in the black there. And then the same thing on the other side right here. Barely can see that, but we didn't tighten it down yet. So we're just going to trim the mounts a tiny bit with a cutoff wheel. Actually, I wanted to spin the other way so it blows the sparks ahead. Alright, so we got the motor mounts trimmed up just a hair. Just like that. I threw some paint on there. I only had blue, so don't rust. But, yep. Alright, ready?
Yeah, good stuff to putting some stuff over at that.
Alright, so I took a little break from filming because I had to put a new clutch in and I wasn't going to record all that. But we ran into some issues with the cylinder head hitting over here. You can see it's really tight, but before the engine was essentially resting on it. What we had to do was install the plates from the old engine mounts, these black plates underneath, and that gave us a little bit of breathing room. It's still kind of tight, but there's about an 1/8 inch, maybe even 1/4 inch gap there, so it's a lot better. But it shouldn't move a whole lot with those poly bushings. So now we just got to put the rack in, the control arms, the sway bar, put everything back together, and it should be good to go. Okay, so one issue that I was worried about with this subframe was with the passenger side bracket bolted down, the steering rack could move up and down about 1/8 of an inch. So what I had to do was take a 1/8 piece of metal, kind of like a shim, and put it underneath the bushing so it's nice and tight. I cut it to fit, and now The rack is nice and tight, so that should hold that. I also used a little bit of epoxy to hold it in place so it wouldn't fall out. Hey guys, so I just wanted to stitch this into the video of the install. I did run into some issues installing the subframe. One was the steering rack bushings. I was expecting that, but like I said, if you use a 1/8 inch piece of metal and you put that underneath of the rack bushing, it really tightens everything up. I have seen people take the top clamp that holds the rack in, get a second one, cut the ears off, and then weld that into the subframe, just tack it in, and that way it makes a full circle with both the clamps together. That's a really good idea. I think I'd like to go that route eventually. For now, everything's holding together. I drove the car, it felt real good. If you look back, I posted a video last week of driving the car at nighttime, and the handling difference, it blew me away with how much better it was. So check that video out. I also have some drawings as far as the engine valve cover hitting the subframe in that one spot. I contacted William at TSS and he told me that he updated the design. So I don't know if I was the reason for that, because I had a lot of problems with that. I sent him a million messages. What I ended up doing was I ended up cutting and re-welding that tube in to my subframe, because I do a lot of welding and stuff. So I mean, obviously the regular guy probably doesn't want to do that. So he said that he has updated the design so that it clears it now. He put a bend in that tube, so everything should be fine. So don't worry about that. You are not supposed to have to put those metal shims under the engine mounts like I had. After I modified my subframe, I ended up taking those metal shims back out and the engine sits lower again. So I drew up some plans for the rack bushings. I put a small amount of JB Weld on that 1/8 shim so it wouldn't move at all. But eventually I'm going to hammer that out of there and then weld in the clamp like I was telling you. There is a TSS FAB support group on Facebook, and they are very helpful. The older GC and GD bodies, I don't think they had any issues because they sell thousands of subframes for those cars every year. The GRs are a lot less out there, so I think I brought a lot of those issues to light, and they made the changes because I pointed them out. So I would like to see a half circle rack mount in the future. So yeah, just wanted to share that with you. Also, like I said I was going to, I weighed everything that came off the car and everything that went back on, so I'm just gonna put a screenshot of that at the very end of this video. So thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. I hope this was helpful, and I hope that in the future we don't run into these problems with these subframes, because the subframe, it's a night and day difference. I recommend it to anybody, but you gotta be able to fab up a little bit to be able to get this thing to fit right, so keep that in mind. But anyway, thanks again for watching, and keep an eye out for future videos.